Express each ratio in lowest terms. And here we have 4 different ratios. Let's start with the first one, 18 to 81. A ratio is just a comparison of 2 quantities by division. So here this really means 18 over 81. And we want to write this in lowest terms. So we're basically reducing a fraction here. It's not any more complicated than that. These are both divisible by 9. We recognize them as multiples of 9. 18 is 9 times 2. 81 is 9 times 9. And so in this case, our answer is 2/9. Note that we can also write this as 2 to 9 like that, 2:9. Either one is correct. I tend to default to using fractions, but you can use whichever your heart desires. Next, let's look at 28 to 20. We can write this as a fraction as 28 over 20. And our job here is to simplify. Both of those numbers are multiples of 4, so we can reduce by a factor of 4. 28 divided by 4 is 7. 20 divided by 4 is 5. And our ratio here is now 7 to 5, or 7/5. Next, let's look at 64 to 144. We'll put that in fraction form. And both of those, I think they're certainly both multiples of 4. There might be a larger number that they're divisible by, but let's reduce by 4. 64 divided by 4 is 16. 144 divided by 4 is 36. I did that in my head by dividing by 2 twice. 144 divided by 2 is 72. Divide that by 2, 36. Then they're both even, so we can divide by 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 36 divided by 2 is 18. And still even, we can divide by 2 again. That gives us 4 over 9, which is reduced. So that ratio is 4 to 9. The reason that we reduce ratios is because when we have smaller numbers, it's a lot easier for our brains to process. One of the places you might see ratios is if you are a gambling person. If you get the scratchers, the lottery tickets, on the back they might give you your odds of winning, or if you are a betting person, there will be odds. And 4 to 9 is a lot easier to understand than 64 to 144, right? 4 to 9 odds might mean that, 4 times out of 13 you win and 9 times out of 13 you lose. So for every 4 wins, there's 9 losses. It's easier to wrap your head around than for every 64 wins, there's 144 losses. Smaller numbers are always easier for us to comprehend. So that's why we will always be reducing to lowest terms. Let's do the last one, 60 to 12, or 60/12. Now both of these are multiples of 12, so we can reduce by a factor of 12. 60 divided by 12 is 5. 12 divided by 12 is 1. And usually, if we had 5 over 1, we would just do the division and get 5. But in this case, I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Because remember that a ratio is a comparison of 2 quantities via division. So we want those 2 quantities to both be represented. 5 to 1 might mean for every 5 wins, there's 1 loss, or something like that. So having both of those numbers represented is important. We also can't write it with the colon if we only have the 5. We need the 1 there. So that's why we don't reduce these to whole numbers. We leave them as fractions.